Mars has been in the headlines once again, this time for discoveries made with the Curiosity rover and JPL. So Curiosity is a rover about the size of a car that's been living on Mars for a couple of years now. It's been running along the surface, trying to find out information about the past history and environment of Mars, with the ultimate goal of trying to see if it could have sustained life at one point, and the holy grail, of course, being finding evidence of either active life or past life on the Martian surface. So in the press release that happened, there were two big announcements that came from Curiosity, both relating to its primary objective of trying to understand the previous Martian environment. So for the past while, Curiosity has been roaming around Gale Crater, and it's been looking at soil and rocks in that crater to try and investigate what the environment was like quite some time ago. And the first announcement comes around the material it was studying. So Gale Crater is quite interesting. It has lots of mudstone deposits in its base, which usually hint to some kind of fluid motion, carrying sediments down and depositing them in layers. So this itself hints to some past Martian environment that has some kind of liquid water running over the place. But what they found was that when they analyzed the chemicals inside of these rocks, they came up with some very interesting organic molecules. Now these aren't living things, otherwise that would have been the holy grail found right there. What these were is just carbon chains, fairly complex, but also rather robust carbon chains. So they found things like benzene and propane and these other types of what we call organic molecules. Now this is interesting in itself because these organic molecules are quite cool, but also it hints to that there might be more complex organic molecules inside of this Martian rock, this mudstone, that were destroyed in the process of analyzing this rock. So to analyze the rock, they need to heat it up to about 500 degrees Celsius to vaporize it and then analyze the atoms and molecules that come out of the rock vapor. So it's suspected that there's some fairly complex organic molecules inside of these rock layers, which is rather interesting. The second bit of information that came out of this press release, which perhaps was more interesting, is an idea that Mars actually has a seasonal variation in the amount of methane in its atmosphere. So if you don't know, methane is often used as what we call a biomarker, so it traces biology on Earth. And we often think that it might be a good tool to probe exoplanet atmospheres to see if there might be life on those planets as well. So on Mars, they have this instrument called SAM on Curiosity, which measures the components in the atmosphere, and they found a seasonal variation of methane, where over the past few years it's been on Mars. And it's interesting because the seasonal variation goes as when it's warmer, there's more methane in the air, and when it's cooler, there's less methane in the air. So it could well be that there's some very simple geological process that's going on Mars producing methane. But it could also be, and it seems potentially plausible given the temperature variation, that there's some kind of subsurface life on Mars still, some kind of bacterial life that's rather resilient, which makes methane as a byproduct, and it likes being warm. So when Mars gets warm, it produces more methane because it's more active. But this is, of course, speculation. It may be wildly wrong. But it does give us hope for future Mars missions, because if we can understand the source of methane, or at least tell us something interesting about the geology of Mars, or it could potentially show us life outside of the Earth, somewhere in the universe. So Mars, although we've been exploring it for some time now, looks like it's got plenty more secrets for us to explore and understand, which is pretty cool. And I really look forward to the next press announcement from NASA and JPL about the Curiosity rover, and I sure hope it'll be something in regards to finding life on Mars, because imagine that, finding alien life on a planet other than Earth. It would be absolutely remarkable.